ॐ गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुसाक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। अखण्डमण्डलाकारं व्याप्तं येन चराचरं तत्पदं दर्शितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करम्। ॐ सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। ॐ श्रीकृष्ण परमात्मने नमः। अष्टादशोऽध्यायः मोक्षसंन्यासयोगः। श्रीभगवानुवाच सिद्धिं प्राप्तो यथा क्षम्यताम् I think स्वे स्वे कर्मण्यभिरतः संसिद्धिं लभते नरः स्वकर्मनिरतः सिद्धिं यथा विन्दति तच्छृणु यतः प्रवृत्तिर्भूतानां येन सर्वमिदं ततं स्वकर्मणा तमभ्यर्च्य सिद्धिं विन्दति मानवः। श्रेयान् स्वधर्मो विगुणः परधर्मोत्स्वनुष्ठितात् स्वभावनियतं कर्म कुर्वन्नाप्नोति किल्बिषम्। सहजं कर्म कौन्तेय सदोषमपि न त्यजेत् सर्वारम्भा हि दोषेण धूमेनाग्निरिवावृताः। असक्तबुद्धि सर्वत्र जितात्मा विगतस्पृहः नैष्कर्म्य सिद्धिं परमां सन्न्यासेनाधिगच्छति। सिद्धिं प्राप्तो यथा ब्रह्म तथाप्नोति निबोध मे। समासेनैव कौन्तेय निष्ठा ज्ञानस्य या परा बुद्ध्या विशुद्धया युक्तो धृत्यात्मानं नियम्य च शब्दादीन् विषयान् त्यक्त्वा रागद्वेषौ व्युदस्य च विविक्तसेवी लद्वाशी यत् वाक्कायमानसः ध्यानयोगपरो नित्यं वैराग्यं समुपाश्रितः अहंकारं बलं दर्पं कामं क्रोधं परिग्रहं विमुच्य निर्ममः शान्तो ब्रह्मभूयाय कल्पते। ब्रह्मभूतः प्रसन्नात्मा न शोचति न काङ्क्षति समः सर्वेषु भूतेषु मद्भक्तिं लभते परां। भक्त्या मामभिजानाति यावान्यश्चास्मि तत्त्वतः ततो मां तत्त्वतो ज्ञात्वा विशते तदनन्तरम्। सर्वकर्माण्यपि सदा कुर्वाणो मव्यपाश्रयः मत्प्रसादादवाप्नोति शाश्वतं पदमव्ययम् चेतसा सर्वकर्माणि मयि सन्न्यस्य मत्परः बुद्धियोगमुपाश्रित्य मच्चित्तः सततं भव मच्चित्तः सर्वदुर्गाणि मत्प्रसादात् तरिष्यसि अथ चेत्त्वमहङ्कारान् न श्रोष्यसि विनङ्क्ष्यसि यदहङ्कारमाश्रित्य न योत्स्य इति मन्यसे मिथ्यैष व्यवसायस्ते प्रकृतिस्त्वां नियोक्ष्यति स्वभावजेन कौन्तेय निबद्ध स्वेन कर्मणा कर्तुं नेच्छसि यन्मोहात् करिष्यसि वशोऽपि तत् कर्तुं नेच्छसि यन्मोहात् करिष्यस्य वशोऽपि तत् तत्सत् सर्वं श्रीकृष्णार्पणमस्तु So we were looking at the discussion of Ekadashi, then Bodhis, and the Vaisheshika. I think we completed that yesterday. I think. Sumaji is there. Should I repeat this discussion of Vaisheshika? And I think
Hari Om Belaji, we read up to the basis of the Vaisheshika's contention. But the problem with the Vaisheshika's view we have to read, but there is not much of clarity. Maybe
here what even I was going through, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I was going through yesterday after our class also. Then I was thinking that Brahmaraji had once told, no, because this is Shankaracharya himself is creating this all scenario that suppose if these Buddhists are there, then what could be there? Then Vaisheshikas are there, then what could be their takeaways and how they will argue. So instead of getting entangled to this, the clarity what we have when we were going smoothly, right? These are all the different people's. Maybe these are like Acharya has put forward, right?
Right. But we were just thinking like not to pay much. No, I not pay much attention to that. But it was all these objections are for us to know, because so that the more clarity is there in the Shankara's exact message. This is
very
the only
true. So I should
continue
read from.
You can continue from the problem with Vaisheshika's view, or maybe one paragraph before. We ended up to here, page 288.
So I will, here is refutation of Vaisheshika's contention from there. What is the problem?
You can read from here, I think.
Yeah. Okay. So Ekadashi and Buddha's argument that was, and now the Vaisheshikas. I will just read a paragraph before that so that there will be a clarity. The Vaisheshika's contention: when something acts, it has action. It is sakriya. And when it does not act, it is free from action. It is nishkriya. The same thing, when it does something, becomes sakriya, and when it does not do anything, becomes nishkriya. This is what Atma is according to the Vaisheshikas. It is a substance that has the potential of doing karma, but is not the basis upon which the action takes place. A top, for example, is not doing any action when it is still, but it has the potential of being active. When you spin the top, it is sakriya. And when it stops spinning, it is nishkriya. Similarly, Atma is sometimes active and sometimes inactive. And since it is possible for the Atma to be free from activity sometimes, then it is possible for it to be totally free from all activities. By some method with which you engage Atma in activity, you can put this Atma at rest. Thus, Sarva Karma Sannyasa is possible for an Atma conceived of in this way. It is not eternally active, like the Atma of the first contention, the Sankhyas, nor is it non existent, like the Atma of the second contention, the Bauddhas. The thing that distinguishes this Atma from the Atmas of both the earlier contentions is that it is active and also not active. In an existent thing, a substance called Atma, an action that was not there before arises, exists, and is destroyed. Previously, there was no action at all in the object, and therefore the action was non existent. Then the action arises, exists for some time, and finally ceases. Since the very action which was brought into being is destroyed, the substance in which the action occurs remains pure. While it has the potential for action, it is not the locus for the action. So the Vaisheshikas are totally different. They believe that as long as you give some force or some stimulus, then only it becomes active. Compared to that, the Sankhya and Bauddha, they have, like Sankhya says, it is eternally active. And Bauddha, they do not accept Atma only. Yeah. So, refutation of the Vaisheshika contention. Kindly correct me if my understanding is wrong. Okay, please. So, it is not like self-effulgent because of which the whole existence takes place. But here it is said that when there is some stimulus, then there is some force, then like the example of the top is given by Swamiji. Refutation of the Vaisheshika contention. What the Vaisheshika says goes against what Bhagavan says. What is the problem with this? Bhagavan had said earlier that there is no existence for a non-existent thing. Nashato vidyate bhavaha. Nor is there non-existence for an existent thing. Na bhavo vidyate sataha. But in this contention of the Vaisheshikas, there is both existence for the previously non-existent action and non-existence for the once existent action, contradicting what Bhagavan Krishna has said and therefore against the vision of the Shruti also. The first proposition is that an action that was non-existent is born. This is known as Asatkarya Vada, the contention that an effect was non existent before its creation. A pot, they will say, was totally non-existent prior to its creation from clay. And since the
Hariom Belaji,
previous, yeah,
Hariom Belaji, the
yeah,
line, the paragraph which starts, Bhagwan had said earlier that there is no existence for a non-existent thing. Nasato vidyate bhava. Nor is there non-existence for an existent thing. Na bhavo vidyate sataha. This was which shloka? Do you remember the shloka? Nasato vidyate bhava.
no, no, I don't remember.
I think it is in the second chapter. I will find out and tell you.
Yeah,
Maybe in
they have
second
written
chapter.
second chapter, 16 shloka. They have written
Oh,
below.
okay, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Okay.
sir.
Yeah. Right. Right. So nothing. He says
Shall I
that
read that
there is no
shloka?
existence. Huh? Yeah, you can.
Shall I read?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for finding out. Yeah.
No, it's written just below 216 down the
Is
page.
it?
Yeah.
Okay, okay, okay. Sorry. Huh. Correct. Yeah, we had read, yes. Nashato vidyate bhavah, na bhavo vidyate satah, ubhayorapi drashtontah, tvanayo tattvadarshibhihi. The
Can you read the
unreal,
meaning? Yeah.
yeah, the unreal has no existence. There is no non-existence of the real. The truth about both these has been seen by the knowers of the truth or the seers of the essence.
We have to read that shloka, then only we'll be able to uh, get the whole, like the real message what Bhagwan says. We have forgotten.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nasatu with, or maybe tomorrow Nanaji comes, then we can tell him to explain this
Yeah, this
sentence.
shloka, 216.
Nashatu with. Kindly put it in the chat. I can copy and paste, and then I can
Okay.
make the compilation of our previous questions as well. And request to everyone, if you have any question, you can put it in the chat box here. I will read once again the meaning. The unreal has no existence. There is no non-existence of the real. The truth about both these has been seen by the knowers of the truth. Avidya is anadi, I believe, and the meaning is there is no beginning, there is no end to the avidya as well. And there is no non-existence of the real. The truth about both this has been seen by the knowers of the truth or the seers of the essence. Okay, we will read further so that it gives some clarity. I read once again. What is the problem with this? Bhagwan had said earlier that there is no existence for a non-existent thing. Nashato vidyate bhavah. Sorry, bhavah or bhavah, no? Nor is there non-existence for any existent thing. Na bhavo vidyate satah. But in this contention of the Vaisheshikas, there is both existence for the previously non-existent action and non-existence for the once existent action, contradicting what Bhagavan Krishna has said and therefore against the vision of the Shruti also. The first proposition is that an action that was non-existent is born. This is known as Asatkaryavada. Yeah, so the eternal is never born, no? The first proposition, as per the first, that it is born. This is known as Asat Karyavada, the contention that an effect was non-existent before its creation. A pot, they will say, was totally non-existent prior to its creation from clay. And since the previously non-existent pot is brought into being, the pot is a real object. This logic is extended to the creation to conclude that the creation begins. After being born, it gains existence and then is finally destroyed and disappears. Thus, the non-existent gains existence and the existent gains non-existence, which is exactly the reverse of what Bhagavan says. For the non-existent, there is no existence, and for the existent, there is no non-existence. Nashato vidyate bhavo, na bhavo vidyate sataha. I think it is clear, very clear, that whatever avidya, nama rupa, they are avidya, and it has no beginning, no end. And whatever is the truth, the reality, okay, there is no non-existence for that.
So the clay is the
Clay is the reality.
Real.
Correct.
Yeah.
Reality.
Whereas say the pot is the real. Okay.
Correct.
Right.
Vaisheshika's reply. Our Vaisheshika responds to this by saying that even though it is against the vision of Bhagavan, it is reasonable. This is the response of someone who does not accept the words of Krishna or Shruti as pramana, a means of knowledge for knowing things, and relies purely on reasoning to determine the validity of any given thing. What is logical alone should be accepted, not what is illogical, even if it is the statement of Bhagavan. A believer will end the discussion by saying that what Bhagavan says is final, whether you understand it or not. And if you do not accept the words of Bhagavan as true, there can be no further discussion. Shankara is not a believer of this kind. He is a teacher, acharya, and a jnani for whom Bhagavan and his vision are not two different things. And therefore, for him, this response has to be answered by pointing out the defect in it. What has been said here is against all our means of knowledge. Pramana Viruddha, against all our experience and reason. Though he claims his contention is reasonable, Shankara shows how it is not. So beautiful. So although it is against the pramana, but still it is how it is. I think once we read, we will come. So much of clarity is coming now. Yeah. Basis of the Vaisheshika's contention. According to the Vaisheshika, before the creation, there were atomic particles called Paramanus, which combined in pairs to form Dvyanukas, the building blocks of creation. Prior to the arising of Dvyanukas, there is no creation. So the creation is looked upon as something that begins at a given time. The Dvyanuka also is considered totally non-existent before the joining of two atoms into a pair. And thus, the non-existent Dvyanuka also newly comes into being. Once it is created, it is existent for some time and then again becomes non-existent. It has both a prior and a posterior non-existence. Prag, Pragbhava and Pradvams, Pradvamsabhava. Pradvamsabhava. Kindly correct me if my pronunciation is wrong.
Pradhavam Swabhava.
Pradvams,
Pragabhava, Pradhavam
Pragbhava,
Swabhava.
Pradvams Sabhava. Okay.
Sabhava.
Dhanyavad. Yeah. Pragbhava and Pradhavam Sabhava. Okay. So I will repeat once again. It has both a prior and a posterior non-existence, Pragbhava and Pradhavam Sabhava. When this is so, we have the non-existent becoming existent and the existent becoming non-existent. Existent. Since everything is real for him, Satya, what is not Satya is what is non-existent. So this is Vaisheshika's. Since everything is real for him, Satya, what is not Satya is what is non-existent. The contention is that the non-existent assumes the status of being existent and then becomes non-existent again when it is destroyed. Before its creation, it is non-existent like a rabbit's horn, and to bring it into being a cause is necessary. The Vaisheshika speaks of three kinds of causes. The Samavayi Karana, the Samavayi or Samavayi,
Samavai, I think.
Samavayi. Okay, Samavayi Karana or inherent cause, like the cotton for the thread and thread for the cloth, or the Asamvayi Karana or non-inherent cause, like the Tantu Samyoga, the coming together of the thread for the cloth, and the Nimitta or efficient cause, like the weaver, loom, etc. Depending upon these various causes, a non-existent cloth, for example, becomes existent. The problem with this is as follows. Firstly, it is not tenable that a non-existent thing is born. And secondly, it cannot be said that it has a cause, because no such thing is seen for the non-existent things like a rabbit's horn. We do not ever see a rabbit's horn or the son of a barren woman, childless woman coming into being, so much less depending upon some causes. The concept of something non-existent becoming existent is completely contradicted by means of knowledge we have at our disposal. So the two causes, as per Vaisheshika, three causes, Samavai, Asamavai, and the Nimitta. So they believe that there is a cause for the creation. Once that is fulfilled, it is destroyed and there is nothing. And the examples are given, like the thread and the thread is for the cotton. For then the efficient cause, like the weaver and the loom. Depending upon these various causes, a non-existent cloth becomes existent. But that is also proved wrong, because it is not tenable that a non-existent thing is born. If someone can explain in a simple language, kindly come forward and explain, or I read further. I think I will read further. The problem with the Vaisheshika view, if you say that it is only the manifestation of an existent thing that is dependent on a cause that is possible to understand, an existent thing like a pot that is to be produced comes into being depending upon some cause for its mere manifestation. Things such as a pot exist in an unmanifest condition even before their creation into given names and forms. Their creation depending on causes only for the manifestation of name and form. This is something one can understand. But how can things that are totally non existent come into being? What kind of causes will they require? This is something that we do not see happening, and it is contradicted by every means of knowledge that we have. Furthermore, if the non existent becomes existent and the existent becomes non existent, no one can have any certainty in transactions. We have a certain understanding of our means of knowledge and the object to be known, and of cause effect relationships in general, which we rely on, and on the basis of which we conduct our affairs. When we use our means of knowledge, it is with the understanding that one thing is the cause and another the effect. If we perform a given action, it is with the knowledge that this particular action is invariably the cause for a given result under certain conditions. If I put my foot forward, I move forward. If I put it behind me, I move backward. All transactions are undertaken under the basic assumption that from an existent cause there is an existent effect. A new thing does not come into being from a non existent thing. Only an existent gold becomes the chain, existent clay becomes a pot. Never does anything existent come from non existence. If it did, there could never be any certainty about what exists and what does not exist. When we say that a pot exists, we all understand that it means that it does exist. And when we say there is no rabbit horn, there is no rabbit horn. It is conclusive. But we can never have this kind of understanding if what we thought was non existent suddenly appears and what we think exists disappears. According to the Vaisheshika view, it would not be possible to have this certainty that what exists exists and what does not exist does not. But we do have it, and therefore this view is untenable. So, according to Vaisheshika, there is always a cause. If you do not have the cause, there will be no effect. But as per our Bhagwan, everything it is eternal, the existence and non-existence. Further, they say that because the dyad Dvyanuka originates, it has a connection both to its cause and to its own existence. Before it arises, it is non-existent. Then later, depending on the activity of its own cause, the non-existent Dvyanuka is connected to the Parmanus, and to existence through an inherent connection, which they call Samavaya Sabandha. Samavaya. I hope I am correct. Please correct me if I am wrong. Samavaya Sabandha. This is an invention of the Vaisheshika to try and establish a non-existent entity becoming existent, Asat Karyavada. They maintain that the cause and effect are two independent principles, but are seen together because of this connection. The important thing here is that the Samavaya Sabandha establishes the connection of a non-existent thing to its cause, allowing it to come into being as an effect. When it comes into being, it is connected to its cause, and before its birth also, it is connected to its cause by this Samavaya Sabandha. The previously non-existent Dvyanuka, when it is born, becomes existent. I think we are remembering Brahmaraji so much. These difficult lines she can explain so simply. If someone can help in interpreting in a simple way, please come forward and explain. Or if you want me to read something, repeat. Just let me know, please. The Vedanti's question to the Vaisheshika. Here we ask a question. How can
we can once again read the problem with Vaisheshika's view, or we move forward? Not much of clarity.
Yeah, that's what I'm telling. No,
You know that haze is there. Haze, very hazy, and it is seeming so dry. Because when you don't understand, you don't relish, no?
Correct,
all silent.
very true. Absolutely true. And I'm afraid because I'm getting, but I'm not able to explain. And if it is not correct, then it may create a confusion, more confusion.
No, a little bit we are getting, but not the whole context of it. Like it's not crystal clear exactly what.
Yeah, I will read once again. No problem. The problem with the Vaisheshika from here, right?
Yes.
Yeah. The problem with the Vaisheshika view, if you say that it is only the manifestation of an existent thing that is dependent on a cause, that is possible to understand. An existent thing like a pot that is to be produced comes into being depending upon some cause for its mere manifestations. Things such as a pot exist in an unmanifest condition even before their creation into given names and forms, their creation depending on causes only for the manifestation of name and form. This is something one can understand. But how can things that are totally non existent come into being? What kind of causes will they require? This is something that we do not see happening, and it is contradicted by every means of knowledge that we have. Furthermore, if the non existent becomes existent and the existent becomes non existent, no one can have any certainty in transactions. Uh, I think Sumaji was having clarity yesterday when she was reading. So would you like to because her voice and everything was so clear yesterday. And would you mind taking over, Sumaji, if it is okay for you?
Yeah, I am also very vague, but this is what I understand that Vaisheshika says that something which is non-existent will come into existence, exist for some time, and then disappear. Whereas the Vedanti says what is non-existent never existed, and what is existing will never disappear. So their thing is that the pot comes and then stays for some time and goes away, is okay. But if you apply it to as a universal principle, where the Vedanti says no, that a barren woman's child or a rabbit's horn does not exist. So it has never existed. So this cannot come into being. As per the Vaisheshikas, this can come into being. Vedanti says, no, it will not happen. What is not there will not happen. What is there will also not disappear. So they say the pot disappears, but Vedanti says, no, pot does not come into being or disappear. It has always existed as clay. This much clarity I got.
Yeah,
After
wonderful.
that, I don't know.
So that's why, may I request you to take over, Sumaji, if it is okay with you? I can read for more, but your voice and your clarity is very nice. So you explain very well. I mean, with every topic.
Thank you so much, but afterwards I forget also. Let me go to my
No, but
computer.
right now that is required, no, because it is not. It is becoming little monotonous.
Yeah,
If
I
it
feel
is
we are.
explained well, if it is
Yeah,
explained well, then that interest can be in, you can say that it is created, that interest.
yeah. Let me go to my computer. Can you read for
Yeah, no
5 minutes?
problem. Yeah, sure.
See, the Belaji, it's not that you are
Yes.
not interested. We are not interested, no. That Vaisheshika's explanation is not interested. Therefore, we are not interested. Not that.
It's actually wasting our time and
Yeah, that
energy
is what I
trying to
told.
understand
So
something.
just we will go through it and just proceed. You not have to worry. Okay?
Correct.
Yeah, thank you so much for
Yeah, very right, Belaji.
comforting.
It is not that you are not interesting. You are very pleasing to hear, but these Vaishishkas are we don't want to hear them.
Yeah, they are a bit confused people and try to confuse everybody with some non-existent knowledge.
Yeah, but it is important to listen to them also. Yeah, Dr. Renu says better to read further. Yeah. Furthermore, if the non-existent becomes existent and the existent becomes non-existent, no one can have any certainty in transactions. We have a certain understanding of our means of knowledge and the object to be known and of cause-effect relationships in general, which we rely on and on the basis of which we conduct our affairs. When we use our means of knowledge, it is with the understanding that one thing is the cause and another the effect. If we perform a given action, it is with the knowledge that this particular action is invariably the cause for a given result under certain conditions. If I put my foot forward, I move forward. If I put it behind me, I move backward. All transactions are undertaken under the basic assumption that from an existent cause there is an existent effect. A new thing does not come into being from a non-existent thing. Only an existent gold becomes the chain. Existent clay becomes a pot. Never does anything existent come from non-existence. If it did, there could never be any certainty about what exists and what does not exist. When we say that a pot exists, we all understand that it means that it does exist. And when we say there is no rabbit horn, there is no rabbit horn. It is conclusive. But we can never have this kind of understanding if what we thought was non-existent suddenly appears and what we think exists disappears. According to the Vaisheshika view, it would not be possible to have this certainty that what exists exists and what does not exist does not. But we do have it, and therefore this view is untenable. Further, they say that because the dyad Dvyanuka originates, it has a connection both to its cause and to its own existence. Before it arises, it is non-existent. Then later, depending on the activity of its own cause, the non-existent Dvyanuka is connected to the Paramanus and to existence through an inherent connection, which they call Samavaya Sabandha. This is an invention of the Vaisheshika to try and establish a non-existent entity becoming existent, Asat Karyavada. They maintain that the cause and effect are two independent principles, but are seen together because of this connection. The important thing here is that the Samavaya Sabandha establishes the connection of a non-existent thing to its cause, allowing it to come into being as an effect. When it comes into being, it is connected to its cause, and before its birth also, it is connected to its cause by this Samavaya Sabandha. The previously non-existent Dvyanuka, when it is born, becomes existent. The Vedantis
Yeah, please read. I'll share.
No, you can continue because with every, I mean, your explanation is also supplemented, supported by the Swamiji's explanation, no? So it makes the clarity. Yeah, here we completed this paragraph.
Yeah, if we understand this paragraph, I think it is very clear. It will become clear.
Yeah. So kindly help to understand that. Yeah. It is very nicely explained, but still you can say in your words, I mean, it becomes clearer. Same like Brahmaraji when she explains in a simple term.
That this Dayanuka or Divyanuka, I don't know how to say it. They say it has a connection with the cause and effect. Only thing, it comes into being when the effect is seen and disappears when the effect is lost. This is my understanding. So they are trying to establish the Atma, my understanding, that the Paramatma comes and goes. When it has to come into existence, it has connection with the cause. And then when it has to disappear, it disappears. So they are trying to, he says, no, this is an invention of the Vaisheshika to try to establish a non-existent entity coming into existence, becoming existent. Asat Karyavada. So they don't want to say that there is Paramatma, but they say when things come into being, something that was non-existent also comes into being, because that is the cause for its existence. So that also becomes the effect. And they maintain that the cause and effect are two independent principles, but are seen together because of this connection. Does it make sense?
Yes, yes, it does. Yeah.
Says the most important thing here is that the Samavaya Sambandha establish the connection of a non-existent thing to its cause, allowing it to come into being as an effect. So this Samavaya Sambandha is actually, in my understanding, is the Paramatma, or the only thing that exists. But they say that it was not there, but somehow it comes. And the cause becomes the effect. When it comes into being, it is connected to its cause. And before its birth, also it is connected to its cause by this Samavaya Sambandha. Previously non-existent Divyanuka, when it is born, becomes existent. So they are connecting this Divyanuka has some Samavaya Sambandha. So they're actually complicating the understanding, that's all. That's all I can explain. If anyone else would try to help us, that will be nice. I think we need to read this also. How does the Vedanti counters this? Should I read further? The Vedanti's question.
Yes, dear.
The Vedanti's question to the Vaisheshika. Here we ask a question. How can a non-existent thing have an existent cause? That's correct. An existent thing can only serve as a cause to another existent thing. For something that is non-existent cannot be connected in a cause-effect relationship to something existent. Further, how can a non-existent thing establish any connection with anything, whether it is its own cause or some effect? What kind of connection is the rabbit's horn going to establish with the rabbit? What kind of connection is the rabbit's horn going to establish with the rabbit? There is no possibility of a connection, nor is it possible to imagine the connection of a son of a childless woman, either to the woman or to the father. Very nice, very beautiful. I like the way the Vedantis counter everything. Now it is clear, no? See, here they are saying something non-existent will come into existence as the cause and the relationship, and they call it the Samavaya Sambandha. So Vedantis ask, if there is the Samavadi Sambandha is non-existent, how can it come into existence in the first place? And how can it have a relationship, cause-effect relationship? And their example is this: the rabbit's horn and the son of a childless woman. So how this non-existent connection, how this non-existent thing have a connection, the rabbit's horn with the rabbit, or the son of a childless woman, either to the woman or to the father. The Vaisheshika's reply to Vedanti. Yeah, you want to say something? To this, the Vaisheshika's reply that we do not hold that a non-existent thing has a connection to its cause, but that substances like Divyanukas have a connection, which is known as Samavaya, to their own causes, the Paramanus. We only say that the existent Dayanuka has connection to its cause, the Paramanu. So the Vedanti objects again, but this is not tenable because according to the Vaisheshika, the Divyanuka does not exist before its connection to the Paramanu, its cause. It amounts to saying that after the pot is created, it gets connection to the clay. So Vaisheshika says that the Divyanuka does not exist before its connection to the Paramanu. So once it is connected to the Paramanu, it comes into existence. But this amounts to saying that after the pot is created, it gets connection to the clay. This problem is that he does not accept the existence of the pot before its connection to its cause, which means that the pot came into being without the clay. Before the creation of the pot, there is no connection at all between the clay and the pot. After its creation, the pot gets connected to the clay. It is not difficult to see the absurdity of this. So correct. The existence of pot or anything before its connection to its cause is not tenable. Very correct. So the Vaisheshikas are just arguing for the sake of arguing. Further, the Vaisheshika does not accept that the pot exists before the activity of the potter and the wheel, etc. Before the application of all these causes, it does not come into being. Nor does he accept that the clay alone assumes the form of a pot, that the clay alone is this effect called pot, and therefore between the clay and pot there is a connection. He does not accept that the pot has not really come in from clay, but is only a form of clay. If he does, it becomes Vedanta. The pot becomes purely apparent, not real. It is only a form with a function, but it is not separate from clay. This he does not accept. His contention is that a non-existent pot comes into being, and so there is no other choice but that the non-existent pot, before its creation, has a connection with its cause, the clay. This is the only possible position he can take, that the non-existent thing is connected to its cause. That we have seen is untenable because a thing that is non-existent cannot have a cause, much less a connection with the cause. So far, what is your take?
I have written in the chat.
Okay. he he has a PhD in confusing us. Maybe they are debating amongst themselves. Correct. Very correct. Take some non-issue and argue. That's all it is.
So the next point is proceed further till we go to something we understand.
Correct. So I'll proceed further. The Vaisheshika's reply to the Vedanti. Here the Vaisheshika again argues that even though it is non-existent, still it can have an inherent connection, samavaya sambandha, with its cause. Shankara reminds him that such a thing is not seen for non-existent things like the son of a childless woman. Does he write letters to his mother? There is no connection at all between the non-existent son and the existent woman. At this point, he argues that because the previously non-existent pot has a connection with its cause, while the childless woman's son does not, they are different types of non-existence. My God. Different types of non-existence. So more confusion. Vedanti's objection. What is the difference between one non-existent and the other? Both the creation of the pot, there was a non-existent of the pot. And similarly, this is a non-existence of the son of a childless woman. Both are non-existent. What is the difference between the non-existence of the pot and the non-existence of the son of a childless woman? If the prior non-existence of the pot establishes a connection to its cause, it must be something entirely different from the non-existence of the son of a childless woman who is admitted by both to have no connection to anything. Because one non-existence has connection and the other does not. There must be some difference between these two non-existence. You're very right, Dr. Renu. PhD in confusion. Shankara says,
That's a political debate. BJP versus Congress.
yeah, I think we should just read through and go ahead. No need for any. No need to understand their confusion. Shankara Shankara says that it is not possible for anyone to show a distinction among any of the conceivable non-existence. For example, there is no difference between the non-existence of one object and the non-existence of two objects or the non-existence of many objects. Similarly, the prior non-existence, pragabhava of an object. Similarly, the prior non-existence, pragabhava of an object is not different from the latter non-existence, pradavamsha bhava of the same object. Similarly, there is no way mutual non-existence, anyonya bhava, or total non-existence. Wow, Adi Shankara is super. Antya bhava can be different from any other abhava. If one person does not have knowledge of Sanskrit, another person doesn't have the knowledge of Hindi, what is the difference between the non-existence of the knowledge of Sanskrit and the non-existence of the knowledge of Hindi? Thus, there can be no distinction between one and the other of the abhavas. There is no difference whatsoever. If there is a difference, that non-existent becomes existent because it has features. Only then there can be differences. But between non-existence, there cannot be any difference at all. Very correct. Another argument is advanced. Even though there is no distinction between the two, still somehow only the prior non-existent of the pot, with the help of the potter, gains status of being a pot. Then, after gaining the status of being an existent pot, it gets connected to its own existent cause. Once it is connected, it becomes eligible for transactions. That is, it can hold water, etc., even though it has no distinction from any other non-existence. Still, it is somehow able to come into being. See this somehow, vague it is. Still, it is somehow able to come into being. Then the same pot, having miraculously achieved its existence from non-existence, once it is destroyed, has a later non-existence. I'll just read what this abhava means. Abhava means absence of something. Let us consider that we are talking about the absence of a pot, gata. It would be called gata abhava. We can talk of two types of gata abhava, namely pragabhava, pragabhava and the pradhavamsha bhava. The absence of the pot that is present before the creation of the pot is called pragabhava. And when this pot has been created, is destroyed, the absence of the pot that follows the destruction of the pot is called pradhavamsha bhava. Now, when we talk of a pot, gata, there is absence of any other object in it. Say, for example, a piece of cloth, pata. Similarly, there is absence of gata in a pata. Thus, there is a mutual non-existence of gata and pata in each other. This abhava is known as anyonya bhava, mutual non-existence. There is another kind of abhava, and that is absolute non-existence. Atyanta abhava, like the son of a woman who never gave birth to a child, or like the horns of a rabbit. Before the pot was born, there was pot non-existence. When the pot is destroyed, there is pot non-existence. What is the difference between the prior pot non-existence and the latter pot non-existence? According to him, though both the prior and the latter non-existence are non-existence, still only the prior non-existence will be empirically useful, whereas the latter non-existence of the pot will never be useful. Once the pot is destroyed, the non-existence of it that follows has no eligibility for any empirical use. The prior non-existence, however, has the eligibility to become created and be useful. It can get related to its cause and be spoken of as created, whereas the latter non-existence cannot. This is the difference. Very beautiful. The distinction that is drawn here, however, is not tenable because, as was pointed out, there was no features in non-existence through which we can establish any differences. Very nice. So all their arguments are refuted by Adi Shankara. This abhava, this thing just refutes everything. they were talking about different types of non-existence. So the material for a pot is clay and the material for a cloth is cotton or thread. So they may call those two as non-existent cause for the pot or the clay. So that way they are saying they are non-existent cause. But Adi Shankara says they are the mutual, what is that called? Anyonya abhava. Like clay doesn't exist in the cloth and cotton doesn't exist in the clay. So the Anyonya abhava. Very nicely he has refuted this types of non-existence. Then this Atyanta abhava. That what is the relationship between the son of a barren woman and the horns of a rabbit? It does not exist at all. Then he goes on to say, what is the difference between prior non-existence and post non-existence? Post non-existence is really useless. It is of no value. Prior, they may argue that clay becomes pot and then the pot gets connected to the clay. So then it becomes useful. They may argue like that. But they also say after the existent, pot disappears and becomes non-existent. That cause becomes non-existent. So Adi Shankara says that that has no value at all. It is not tenable. So there are no features in non-existence through which we can establish any differences. If something is non-existent, then there's no feature for it. So how can we talk about differences? Very nice. There are no features in non-existence through which we can establish any differences. Very nice, very clear. But this was, as Dr. Renu said, just PhD in some non-existent knowledge, which is of no use. But we can see that people can think like this. And to make them see the reality, one must have the sharpness of Adi Shankara. Threadbare, he breaks down all their arguments. Anyone wants to share their thoughts? Oh my God, now Shankyas have come. Refutation of the Shankya's view. How much is there in this argument? I think quite a bit. Vedanti's view. Okay, it's good to see their view also. Shankya's view. Should I read or you want to add something?
Read.
Read, okay. The Shankya's view. The Shankyas enter the discussion here saying that we do not say that there is a coming into being for non-existence. We only say that an existent thing alone becomes existent. That is, a pot becomes a pot, cloth becomes a cloth, and there is no creation at all. The Vedanti's objection to the Shankya's view. This also contradicts our pramana. Means of knowledge. If a pot, for example, is already existent, it cannot come into existence. Even the view that through a modification the clay becomes a pot is not tenable. In this view, the substance undergoes a real modification, attracting a new attribute, which was not there before and is now added to the substance. To the existent clay, the new attribute called potness is added, and the creation of the pot takes place. When the created thing is destroyed, that attribute is destroyed. Wow. In this view, the attribute, potness, is as real as the substance clay. This is not really different from the view of the Vaisheshikas, in as much as it accepts the coming into being and the destruction of a previously non-existent property. We have to ask if this potness was existent before or non-existent. We have to ask if this potness was existent before or non-existent. If it was non-existent, then we have the same problem of the existent coming from non-existent. And we address it with the same arguments that were presented to the Vaisheshikas. Okay. If, on the other hand, it is already existent, there is no creation. Even accepting that it is a mere manifestation and disappearance, we have the same problems. Firstly, there is the manifestation of a new quality in a clay, which is the potness. Then the disappearance of that quality. When it disappears, we call it destruction. When it appears, we call it creation. Even accepting the manifestation as well as disappearance of this new quality, we have to analyze whether it exists or not before the manifestation and after the destruction. Did this attribute, the potness, which arrived for the clay, exist before it manifested in the clay or not? If it did not exist, we have the problem of the non-existent coming into being. Then, when it disappears, we have the existent becoming non-existent. What is existent disappears, and what was non-existent appears, which is against our experience and against our knowledge gained by valid means, pramana. There are some people who say that the cause alone undergoes a change, assuming a different state to become the creation, so that the creation is merely a new state of the cause. Then again, the same thing undergoes another change, assuming a new state that is called destruction. The creation is one state of the cause and destruction is another. Accepting that, we have to ask if the new state is real or unreal. For him, it is real because the cause is real. Naturally, if the cause is real, the new state is also real. Accepting that the new state of the cause really arises, we ask whether before its creation it was existent or non-existent. And we have the same argument that we have just seen. In the beginning, it looks like a different argument. But we analyze it, it is the same. We have to remember that the discussion here is to understand the nature of Atma and of karma in order to establish whether or not renunciation of all actions and therefore moksha is possible. So our focus is to understand the nature of Atma and of karma in order to establish whether or not renunciation of all actions and therefore moksha is possible. Any thoughts on the Shankya's way of thinking?
I have written in the chat.
Okay. I'm sorry, I didn't see that. Please proceed further. Okay. BJP versus Congress. Oh my God. Thoughtless state. Yeah, really. This is like politicians arguing, no? On some non-issue, they make a big issue and nobody solves it. They just leave it like that. So Shankya's idea. Yeah, please go ahead. Oh, where did I go now? So Shankyas are saying that the non-existent assumes some new property which was not there, and then again that property disappears when that non-existent thing exists and becomes non-existent. So they are talking about the potness, the quality, the attributes they are talking about. So without creation, this cause becomes, the clay becomes pot, and it has this non-existent quality of the clay, which didn't have the quality of potness, gets the quality of potness once it is gets the form of a pot. So they are talking about the quality which was non-existent in the clay comes into being. And the same quality disappears, becomes non-existent when the pot disappears. So that is their argument. So which goes against our scriptures, the Pramana, which talks about creation, existence, and dissolution of one thing. So Vedanti's view we have to see. So far, shall I read for another few minutes, one more paragraph, and see what they're saying? Okay, Vedanti.
Yes.
Yeah, Vedanta. See, we are talking. Vedanta says that there's only this one thing, that is the Atma. So Vedanti's view, so far we have seen that the existent cannot come from non-existent, nor can it come from the existent. How shall we resolve this? When there is no other possibility, we have to find a way out by looking at the whole thing differently, by a process of elimination, that negation, no? Wow, Adi Shankara, wow. What is that negation called in Sanskrit? Niyati, no. Niyati, not niyati. What is it called? Negation? Not this, not
Neti.
this.
Neti.
Correct. Neti. So far, we have seen that the existent cannot come from the non-existent, nor can it come from existent. How shall we resolve this? When there is no other possibility, we have to find a way out by looking at the whole thing differently, by a process of elimination. we have made every possibility absurd, so that now there is only one way out. The only possibility here is that what we call an existent thing, like a pot, is neither existent nor non-existent. It is not independently existent because it has no existence apart from clay, nor can we dismiss it as totally non-existent because it has a functional reality. It is something in between, which we call mithya. This is the status of the whole of creation. This is the status of the whole creation, mithya. Very nice. What is independently existent is real, satya. Aha. And what is dependent upon, it is called mithya. The only thing that does not depend on anything else, that is independently existent, is Atma, yourself. And everything is dependent upon that. Though there is only one existent reality, due to ignorance, that same existent reality seems to be born, exists temporarily, and gets destroyed. Such as one clay seems to be born in the form of a pot, seems to exist for some time, and then seems to get destroyed. I would like to know how and when the pot is created. You may call it a pot, but that pot by itself does not exist for me. If it has an independent existence apart from the clay, then there is a necessity for me to prove when and how it is created. But when I say that the pot itself does not exist, where is the necessity for me to prove its creation? Looking at it from the standpoint of words, I have two different words, pot and clay. For clay, I have an object, but I do not see an object at all for the pot. Wow. In the place where you show me the pot, I find clay. Where is the pot? Who create what is created? If an object called pot comes out of clay, I can say that a pot is created. But the clay does not undergo any change of state. Clay continues to be clay. Should I stop here? We should read this properly tomorrow, the Vedanta view. Looking at it differently instead of just arguing. Very nice. Anyone wants to add anything? So the clay continues to be clay, even if it is in the form of a pot. So the pot is dependent on the clay. So the pot is mithya. And the clay is satya. Similarly, Atma is independent. And everything depends on the Atma. So what is real and what is unreal is established.
Yes. In the next line, it says, in the same way, Atma does not go. Just read this line. This is the correct.
In the same way, Atma does not undergo any change to become a waker or a dreamer or a sleeper. It remains the same consciousness, Sat Chit Ananda. Since
This
there is no...
correct.
Yeah. This is the ultimate truth. Since there is no waking state for Atma, it is purely because of ignorance, avidya, that I say I am a waker, dreamer, or sleeper. All these conditions are superimposed upon the Atma, which in fact is neither a waker, nor a dreamer, nor a sleeper, nor an enjoyer of any other condition. All these superimposed concepts have to be negated because they are false.
Yeah, thank you.
Wow.
This paragraph made us understand.
Correct. Kind of a big relief, no?
Big relief. Yeah, thank you so much. Oh my God. They could have said it before rather than thought and the that this Sarah is the most important to the number, right?
Yes, this is the most important. But good, it was given in the end. We went through that confusion, and we know that argument doesn't win in any way, in any situation, because people are stuck to what they believe is true. We see that in our life also, no? We also get stuck to what we think is true.
Absolutely. Thank you for the reading the last one.
Thank you for letting me see that I have to read that. Very nice. It's so nice to know different opinions. Gurudev says, no? What is that? Opposite values are complementary. It's good to see different viewpoint as well.
Yes.
I'll stop here.
Yes, thank you.
Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Sarvam Krishnarpanamastu.
निरुपमनित्यनिरंशकेऽप्यखण्डे मयि चिति सर्वविकल्पनादिशून्ये घटयति जगदीश जीवभेदम् त्वघटितघटना पटीयसी माया त्वघटितघटना पटीयसी माया श्रुतिशतनिगमान्तशोधकानपि अहह धनादिनिदर्शनेन सद्यः कलुषयति चतुष्पदाद्यभिन्ना न घटितघटना पडीयसी माया सुखचिदखण्डविबोधमद्वितीयम् वियदनलादिविनिर्मित्ते नियोज्य भ्रमयति भवसागरे नितान्तम् त्वघटितघटना पटीयसी माया अपगतगुणवर्णजातिभेदे सुखचितिविप्रविडाद्यहङ्कृतिं च स्फुटयति सुतदारकेहमोहम् त्वघटितघटना पटीयसी माया विधिहरिहरविभेदमप्यखण्डे बत विरचय्य बुधानपि प्रकामम् भ्रमयति हरिहरविभेदभावान् घटितघटना पटीयसी माया त्वघटितघटना पटीयसी माया
Jai Gurudev.